这次国民党的大败，是否意味着国民党和平统一的理念在台湾已经失去市场？
Taiwan people clearly understand that if Taiwan declared independence, there would be a war.
北京当局对两岸局势是否有提出创新思维的空间和魄力呢？
Frankly, no. The possible model by which both goals could be achieved is some kind of federal model.
大家好，这里是观点，我是主持人唐琪薇。今天观点节目的嘉宾是美国亚太政策专家、前美国在台协会 AIT 的理事主席卜睿哲先生。台湾总统大选已经在今年年初尘埃落定，蔡英文得以再度连任中华民国总统。民进党在此次大选中的大胜，是否意味着独立思想已经是绝大多数台湾人的心声？在接下来的4年当中，蔡英文总统对两岸关系会采取什么样的态度？北京当局是否有提出创新思维的空间和魄力？接下来就让我们一起来听一听卜睿哲先生的观点。卜睿哲先生，非常感谢您接受我们的访问。作为一名长期参与并关注两岸事务的专家，在您看来，这次台湾总统大选和之前的总统大选相比，最大的不同在哪里呢？
We need to look at the party vote because that suggests that there's something going on in Taiwan politics that we didn't necessarily understand before. Tsai Ing-wen got 57% of the vote. But on the party vote, the DPP only got 33%. KMT got about 33%. And everybody else got 33%. But in that last 33%, there was 11% that went to the Taiwan People's Party of Ko Wen-je. So I think that the Taiwan sort of political spectrum is rather divided. And this may make it harder to govern well. This election probably saw more efforts by the PRC to interfere in various ways. There was a lot of intimidation and pressure through the whole of President Tsai's first term. There was a lot of justified concern about disinformation, and there were other ways in which Beijing sort of intruded into Taiwan's political system.
外界普遍认为，香港局势在这次大选中起到了一个关键的作用，您觉得呢？
Well, certainly the Hong Kong issue played a role. The events in Hong Kong were like a blessing from God for Tsai Ing-wen. She did a very skillful job in framing the issue around that. She's a pretty good politician in that respect. But I would say that there are other factors. The KMT campaign really wasn't very good. Also, the DPP understood that if they were going to win, they had to get the youth vote back. And so fairly quickly after the local elections in 2018, the legislative yuan passed a marriage equality bill. And so young people were probably the strongest supporters of President Tsai's re-election of any age group.
这次国民党的大败，是否意味着国民党和平统一的理念在台湾已经失去市场？而民进党的台湾独立思想已经是绝大多数台湾人的心声呢？
The KMT defeat was one more signal that one country, two systems doesn't have a market in Taiwan. But we've known that for over 30 years. One country, two systems has never had a market. I mean, there are some people in Taiwan who would like to see unification, but they oppose one country, two systems. Now, just because Taiwan people oppose unification under one country, two systems does not mean that independence is necessarily the dominant policy goal. Taiwan people clearly understand that if Taiwan declared independence, there would be a war, and that the United States would probably not come to Taiwan's defense. So they're very pragmatic on this issue. So the best option for Taiwan is to try to maintain the status quo, try to improve the status quo, and at the same time as hoping to improve relations with Beijing if Beijing wants to. I mean, what's the U.S. interest is that peace and stability be maintained. So if that's what the status quo means, that's fine with the United States.
您觉得一国两制究竟从这个制度和实施上出现了什么问题呢？
The main answer to that question is that Taiwan changed. At the time that one country, two systems was developed, Taiwan was an authoritarian system. The Taiwan leaders were mainlanders. They could make decisions basically on their own. They actually believed in unification, just not one country, two systems. They said unification under the three principles of the people. But then, starting in the late 1980s, Taiwan changed in a profound way. The people gained a right and an ability to affect policy. They gained a seat at the negotiating table. Ever since, Taiwan leaders have had to keep the opinion of the people in mind as they interact with the mainland, if they interact at all. China, I think, also needs to take into account the views of Taiwan people. You know, if opposition to one country, two systems is as strong now as it was 20 or 30 years ago, or even stronger, then that suggests there's something wrong with one country, two systems.
在台湾方面，您认为蔡英文政府在未来4年的执政当中，对两岸关系会采取什么样的态度呢？
I expect that the Tsai administration is going to emphasize continuity, being open to a better relationship with Beijing if Beijing does not insist on preconditions, work very hard to maintain a good relationship with the United States, try to diversify Taiwan's international activities so it is not so dependent solely on China and the United States. The question I have is, what measures should the mainland take in light of President Tsai's re-election? This election, I think, made very clear that support for unification is low. Support for unification under one country, two systems is very low. Is it time for Beijing to change its approach to unification so that it is more in line with the sentiments of Taiwan people?
您对北京在蔡英文胜选后的表态和举措有什么样的看法呢？
The response has been rather mild. The leadership in China is a little bit preoccupied now with the novel coronavirus, and so perhaps they may not have reached their final conclusions about the election. It's probably advantageous if they take some time to think about it, because it was not the result that they were hoping for, and it may be necessary for Beijing to reflect a little bit on why the approach that it has pursued over the last 4 years, which involves a certain amount of pressure and intimidation and interference, why that failed.
北京当局对两岸局势是否有提出创新思维的这个空间和魄力呢？
Well, frankly, no. I think that they have locked themselves into this corner and can't get out. Maybe they feel that because Deng Xiaoping thought up this formula that they can't change it. But it's quite interesting that they in some areas they're quite flexible and adaptable, but in this one they're not. Moreover, to make things more difficult, instead of being patient as they have been, instead of allowing cross-strait relations to develop and in the hopes that the opinion of Taiwan people will change, they are now doing more and more things to constrain Taiwan, and I think in the end alienate Taiwan people. If you think about the goals of the two parties, Beijing wants unification. Taiwan wants to preserve its sovereignty and its ability to run its own affairs. The possible model by which both goals could be achieved is some kind of federal model. And in a federal system, the parts of it are sovereign entities, which is what Taiwan has always said it is. But you have a political union. This is different from a unitary government, which is what Beijing has had since the founding of the PRC. I suspect that Beijing does not want to go down that road, because if it did, this would be a better arrangement than Hong Kong or Macau have, and certainly a better arrangement than that other parts of the PRC system have. So would the Dalai Lama like a federal approach? Probably yes. Would leaders in Xinjiang, sort of ethnic Uyghurs in Xinjiang, like a federal approach? Well, I'm sure they would. Maybe people in Shanghai would like to have more sort of self-control than they now have. I don't think that Beijing wants to create that kind of trouble for itself.
有观察人士认为，从香港区议会选举民主派大胜到蔡英文总统的再度连任，中国内部将会只剩下鹰派，未来两岸关系恐怕会更加的险恶。您对大陆鹰派人士有一个了解吗？您认为鹰派主导中国两岸事务政策的可能性有多大呢
？This is an interesting hypothesis, and I think there's some merit to it. I do think that the PRC system is quite opaque, not transparent. So it's really hard to gather evidence that would prove this hypothesis. Moreover, we know that the PRC system has become more and more centralized. So it doesn't matter in a way whether there are more hawks in the PLA than there were 10 or 20 years ago. What's important is what Xi Jinping thinks. He and people around him make policy. I mean, he has to take into account the views of others, but this is a centralized system.
有专家认为，两岸关系在未来4年将陷入僵局。中国有一句俗话叫“解铃还须系铃人”。您觉得当前两岸关系僵局，哪一方应该是那个解铃的系铃人呢
？I think the Chinese side. President Tsai, before she was elected the first time, in her inaugural address, after she took office, down to the present day, has sought in various ways to reassure Beijing that her goals are not in fundamental conflict with China's goals, that she doesn't want to challenge its fundamental interests. Beijing set some preconditions on her before it would have a normal coexistence with the DPP administration. I think that Beijing probably set those preconditions in the knowledge that Tsai Ing-wen could not accept them because of political factors in Taiwan. Moreover, Beijing has engaged in all kinds of actions to show its unhappiness and to, in effect, punish Taiwan voters for having elected President Tsai. I mentioned intimidation, pressure, interference. It's a kind of coercion without violence. You know, if you think back to the Chen Shui-bian years, Chen Shui-bian was much more provocative against China, but the measures that China took in response were much less than what they're doing to Tsai Ing-wen in her first term. She's been being treated worse than Abian.
我们知道一中原则是美国长期以来遵守的原则，但是在鹰派反中政策主导的今天，美国是否有可能改变游戏规则，重新评估一中原则和对台政策呢？下期节目，卜睿哲先生将继续和我们分享他的观点。我是主持人唐琪薇，非常感谢您收看，再会。